All right, we're doing it. Here are 5 things I wish I knew early on in my fly fishing career. We'll try not to get too spicy here. But first, I just want to wish everybody a happy new year. This has been a record-setting year for About Trout. I did over 200 days on the water. I have a team of awesome guides that I work with that do a wonderful job representing the brand and just creating a positive experience on the water for our customers. So huge shout out to all of you for trusting your day on the water with us, for supporting the channel, supporting the guide service, and just believing in the vision. So I can't thank you guys enough. I know I slacked on content, but there is an excuse. We had a lot of growth. But my 2023 New Year's resolution is to put out more content for you. And I'm already starting. I got a new studio, backlog in videos. So hopefully you'll enjoy what we have coming up for 2023. I think I put out 7 pieces of content last year. So we're going to try to beat that in a big way. So today's video is just 5 talking points on things that I wish I knew earlier, and I hope they help you. Whether you fished for years or you're just starting your fly fishing journey, I hope this video speaks to you and helps you when you're out in the water. Let's kick it off with number 1, which is big fish are where big fish are. I know it sounds simple and it sounds silly, but if you unpack that, it'll make a lot more sense. And what I'm trying to say is, in today's social media age, it might seem like everyone's slamming huge fish, left and right, you're not catching them, blah, blah, blah. But really, one thing that doesn't get talked about in fly fishing is that geography matters. When I was a kid, I used to fish in Shenandoah National Park, and a 10-inch brook trout was a big deal. It was a big fish. At least that's what I'm telling myself. But on the San Juan, a 10-inch fish isn't even really worth mentioning. And it just goes back to the river systems. The San Juan, I'm blessed to guide a river that kicks out a bunch of gigantic trout. Even a 20-inch trout in the San Juan, that's kind of a daily occurrence. It's expected most days, and we have a lot of fish bigger than that. You can take the same angler that's fished on the East Coast or maybe a small stream in Wisconsin and bring them to the San Juan with the exact same skill sets, and they have a way higher chance of catching a big fish because there's a lot of big fish there. And I just think that's something that doesn't get talked about. You want to think about your geography, your rivers, and try not to compare yourself to anglers out west or anglers in Argentina or New Zealand. Those fisheries grow big fish, and maybe the place that you're fishing doesn't, and that's okay. It's supposed to be fun, and don't let social media rob you of your joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. I heard someone say that one time. It's a great one. But thinking about those things as a newer angler especially, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just where you fish doesn't have big fish. Point 2 is that there is no substitution for time on the water, and it goes without saying. The more time you spend fishing a particular river, pond, whatever, the better that you're going to learn it. Things are always changing in nature with weather events, biological events, things going on, things get moved, trees fall down, those types of things. And it'll really come as a surprise to a lot of you that there's a lot of guides that do not fish on their days off. And, anyone can, find fish when the fishing is good, but it's having those and it's understanding those little intricacies that, hey, there's some weed beds here and there's a new slot in the weeds that fish have moved into, or hey, a tree fell in the river and it's created a log jam and it's holding fish, or it changed the current a little bit. So having that knowledge is just absolutely indispensable. And the more that you fish, you're going to start to notice these things where there's rocks, drop-offs, places that tend to hold fish, or maybe places that you like to fish that no longer hold fish and it's now just dead water. That previous statement wasn't a call out to any guides in particular. That's not how I do things. It's just a fact of the matter. So understanding and putting the time in, to learn your river to the highest levels are really going to save you, especially on a tough day. So like this year on the San Juan, we had like tons of weed growth. And I remember I went out with my buddy Jack and we were streamer fishing. The streamer fishing, there was more to be desired. But we stood up in the boat and we noticed there was a weed bed that we hadn't noticed before, and there was tons of trout packed to the side of it, like hugging right up against the weeds. And I went back to that pot of fish day after day after a fun float, and used that to put my people on fish. When I fish personally, it's a lot differently than when I'm guiding. I'm not going to use my anglers as guinea pigs. I'm going to try to do all that stuff on my off day. So I really use that time to try new techniques, to look for new water, to run lines in my boat that I usually don't, and just looking for those little hidden gems. We've had some big rain events this year that have kind of changed the river up a little bit. So you constantly have to be on the water relearning, so you can just continually, have positive experiences on the water. Also just spending that time, you might kind of have your classic spots, your kind of go-tos. But when things change, you might find something 10 times better if you know where to look. So when you're fishing for fun, which a lot of you just do, period, and I'm jealous. So the next time you're out fishing and you're putting that time in on the water, maybe mix it up a little bit and don't go to your honey holes. Search for new water, look for new features, if you have an open mind and an open eye. All right, let's go to talking point 3, and that is your experience on the water, solo or with a guide, is dictated by your ability to present a fly. So practice casting. I know that kind of seems weird because I promoted Euro nymphing so heavily on this channel, which is like the complete opposite of good casting. But I can't stress this point enough. I get anglers in my boat that want to do technical dry fly fishing, or that they want to streamer fish, and I will do everything in my power to make sure that happens. But when it stops becoming fun, or the casts just can't be made that way and we can't get those presentations, it's just time to move on. The only way to get better at casting is to practice. You're going on a saltwater trip. I'm going on a saltwater trip here soon. You better believe I'm going to be out there practicing with my 9-weight, or practicing, taking shots, little inside shots, just doing what I can to prepare for that trip. But I still try to practice as much as I can. I have a little Echo practice rod, so when I'm on my back porch taking phone calls, I'll pick out a target and I'll practice. Learning how to double haul, learning how to do aerial mends. If these sound like new things to you, there's a bunch of great videos on YouTube. I learned how to cast on a VHS tape from Mel Krieger, and as a little kid I would just go out into my driveway and practice my double haul and practice curve casts and things like that. I haven't really showcased a lot of that on the channel, and I hope to show more of that. But if you really break fly fishing down into its simplest form, it's locating a fish and getting a fly to that fish. So you really want to focus on both of those aspects, but specifically being able to present your flies the way that you need to present them, over multiple currents, mending, things like that. But I can't stress enough, practice casting, and it's really going to take your angling to the next level. All right, this one might be kind of a hot take, but here it goes. Flies and fishing reports do not matter. So I know the flies one's going to ruffle a lot of feathers, and we'll touch on that one, but let's just start with fishing reports. So let's just tell a little story, okay, about a 14-year-old James, before the beard, before Instagram was invented, before YouTube, right? I'm dating myself, but I'm actually 500 years old. That's not the point. The point is, I was 14, I worked for an Orvis retail store outside of Washington, D.C., and we used to write fishing reports. At best, our staff was maybe on a river that we wrote about once a week, if not once a month, once every 3 months. So it's kind of like a game of telephone. You get third-party information here, you get information here, you kind of compile it, add a flow, and there's your fishing report. Here's the same flies, just mix them up. Your fishing reports, too, are only as good as the people that you're getting them from. And so, no disrespect to 14-year-old me, but I had no idea what I was talking about. Are you really going to trust somebody that hasn't fished the river, or that doesn't live anywhere near it, to let you know how it's fishing, compared to somebody that's boots on the ground? And also, with fishing reports, they're all relative, right? So everybody has different metrics that are going to define a successful day on the water. I think the most important metric is having fun, and that doesn't matter if it's 1 fish or 101 fish. That can still be a 1 fish day, can be a phenomenal day, depending on the fishery and lots of other things. So I wouldn't give too much credence to these fishing reports. You just got to go figure it out for yourself. And one thing that will help you with that is understanding how to read a USGS stream flow gauge, learning about ideal flows, learning about, biological and outside factor, or learning about outside factors that impact trout behavior, and you'll never need to look at a fishing report again. So you can just say, hey, the river's flowing at this, it's clearing up, it's X, it's Y, it's the fall, these fish are pre-spawn, then you can go out there and have a great time. So don't put too much time into fishing reports. It's just kind of a dark secret in fly fishing, if you will, that a lot of these things are just strung together and thrown up in about 2 minutes. And a lot of people don't know. I remember one time I lived in Chama, New Mexico, and I saw a report that the Chama is frozen at a certain part of the river. Well, I had just fished it the day before. It certainly wasn't frozen. So again, tying back to time on the water, knowing your fisheries, it's best just to go off what you know and don't give those too much credence. Moving on into that, let's talk about flies do not matter. Yeah, I said it. Trout, it's not so much about the fly rather than is it about the attributes of the fly. So things like size, profile, color, these are important things. Where the trout are, where you're fishing your flies, very important. A great example of this is probably one of my favorite flies for the San Juan is a foam wing emerger, specifically in chocolate. Now, if you go ask 5 different fishing guides on the Juan to open up their box and show you a foam wing emerger, you're going to see 5 different variations. Some guys tie them with tails, some have ribs, some add flash, some use gray foam. They're all foam wings, but they're all different. There's not a particular one. They all work. So thinking about that with your fly selection. Don't think so much about it has to be an RS2 or I won't catch any fish. There's probably something else in your box that will work. These are animals with pea-sized brains. They have no idea what the fly of the month at your local shop is. And if they're out of it, talk to the people at your local shop. There's probably an analog or a fly that's a similar size and profile that will work just as well. So thinking about that, when you think about flies, rather than thinking fly first, you want to think trout first. And I'm just going to stick with trout, and this is rolling into our next point because, hey, that's what I do for a living. So point number 5 is thinking fish first. Specifically for about trout, we're going to think trout first. Going back to all this, I think this is the keys. These are the keys to the kingdom right here. And I give a presentation about this. So I travel around and give my little spiel on this, which I think has completely changed the way that I guide and I fish personally. And that is, you want to think about the prevailing conditions and trends and outside factors like water flow, water clarity, water temperature. Are fish spawning? Are there bugs hatching? What bugs live in the river? All these things. The list goes on. And then think about how those things impact trout. Trout move around a lot more than you think. Trout they're cold-blooded. Their metabolism peaks at about 63 degrees. Where they are in the river can be dictated by where the water temperature, or what the water temperature is, where the bugs are in the column. Is there another angler in front of you on a small creek that spooked them all out of a run? These are all things to think about before you even rig up. A great example of this is my home river. Another thing with trout fishing is understanding what trout like and what they don't like. There's something called transitional water and there's something called holding water. Holding water, you'll always pretty much have fish there. And transitional water is water they move in and out of. A great example of this is like if you're fishing a freestone in the summer and you're catching trout in the riffles and you go back when it's really cold, those trout probably aren't there because there's not bugs, number 1, and 2, they're cold-blooded, they're sluggish, they're going to be in the deeper parts of the run, conserving their energy. An anecdote I like to tell about this was 2 months ago. I had some guys in my boat and I had been timing this midge hatch at a very specific part of the river. So like every day these midges were going off at like 11:30. And I roll in, the day before was great, we roll in, it's 11:30, I don't see any bugs, and sure enough, there's no trout midging or feeding shallow in this grass flat. So I'm like, all right, look guys, let's just take an early lunch. So we chowed down, I told some horrible jokes, and then sure enough, half an hour later, the midges were hatching full effect, the trout had moved into the shallow water, and we had a great day. So just recognizing those changes. Some people would have rolled through, saw no fish, and kept going, but just understanding these outside factors can really help you with your trout fishing. So don't just think like, well, this spot's always good and now it's not. There's probably a reason why, and something changed and the trout reacted. And trout will move, through a river way more than you think. We caught a fish twice last year, once on a streamer, once on a dry fly, and it was like a quarter mile apart. And I can tell because I'll throw those pictures up, but the same spot pattern. And then one more little kind of bonus here, maybe tip 5.3. And that is understanding, and this ties into thinking fish first, especially with trout, an induced take versus feeding trout. I can make a whole video about this, and I actually have the script written, but let's just keep it super simple. You have been programmed, match the hatch, match the hatch, match the hatch, and that's great when the trout are actively feeding on insects. The flip side of that is induced takes. That's like throwing trash flies, eggs, mops, squirmies, San Juan worms, whatever your favorite flavor of trash is. And, I like to fish mops, I like to fish, big leeches and things like that. And people will ask, what does it imitate? My thing is, it's not what it imitates, it's why are they eating it, right? When you introduce a foreign object into a trout's environment, they don't have hands, right? So they'll put their mouth on it, and they ate it, and that can save the day too. But I will extrapolate on that concept in a further video. But that really does it. That's 5.3 things, bonus, that I wish I would have known earlier. Throughout my fly fishing journey, my opinions have changed a lot. I continue to learn every single day, and the day that you stop learning in fly fishing is the day that you die. So, not to be morbid, but I hope this video helped you guys. Please let me know in the comments what you liked, what you didn't like, what you agree with, if any of this makes sense, if any of it helps you. I'm gonna go red fishing soon, so stay tuned for that video. But really appreciate all the support, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. One love.